This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss, co-host of PBS's Motor Week. He'll take your calls and comments now at 844-885-4677 or email him at radio@goss-garage.com. And now, Pat Goss.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Goss's Garage. I'm Pat Goss. If you'd like to talk about cars or something with an engine in it, how about giving me a call, 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-4677. I hope everybody had a very happy Thanksgiving and a safe one at that. Now, one of the things that came up this week on my last perspective, I said that there are a few dishonest shops. And I did mean a few, because most shops and most techs are honest to a fault. Yes, I know many of you think we're all a bunch of crooks and low-class, low-intelligent people who steal for a living, but the truth is that most auto repair techs are doing their best to fix your problems so you can drive safely and reliably. We care about you. We care about safety. But that isn't as easy as it might seem. You see, first is the complexity of the modern car, which has tens of thousands of parts, both moving and non-moving. Then come all the control devices, often called modules, but are really computers of various sizes and types. Just sorting through all of this is pretty daunting, and don't forget that cars are a moving target in that they change yearly or in some cases monthly. Now compare that to law or medicine, where the subjects remain mostly the same for years or perhaps forever. Nope. As technicians, we are constantly trying to learn how this month's new stuff works and how we're supposed to test it when it doesn't work. But then comes the real problem. You, the driver. Think about how much you don't know about modern cars. Most of you know next to nothing when it comes time to get something fixed. You bring your car to me and say, "It's making a noise." I ask, "When does it make the noise?" You say, "Well, all the time." So we go to listen to the noise and the car is silent. And then you say, "Oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't make the noise all the time." Well, when does it make the noise? Well, I think it's when I go uphill, or maybe it's mostly on right turns, I think. Anyway, you'll know exactly what it is when you hear it. You think? Really? Only if I hear it, because without your help in pinpointing when it happens, I may never hit the right combination of conditions to make it happen. And if I can't hear it, I can't diagnose it. The rule here is if it can't be readily duplicated, it probably can't be diagnosed. Then, after a couple hours of riding with you and testing, I charge you for half an hour labor. And you scream at me, telling me I'm a crook because I couldn't fix the noise or problem you never could describe or duplicate. Are you kidding me? Do you scream at your doctor when it takes multiple visits and tests to find what's wrong? Which, by the way, your body has been fundamentally the same for thousands of years. Nope. It's more like, "Gee, thanks, Doc. See you next week for more tests. I'll spend some more money with you." And, of course, there are those of you who take your car to some rat hole shop because they quote you a low price and then royally screw up your car. No sane person would go to one of these places, yet they bank millions every year. Now, that's bad for you, but it was your fault, not mine. So don't come to me and ask me to drop my price to some ridiculous number because you have spent so much money on the problem already. That's not my problem, and no, I won't lower my price because you spent a bunch of money at a crappy shop with clueless wannabe techs. Now, good techs and good shops cost money, and we're entitled to it because we fix your car. We make your car safe. We keep your car reliable. We tell you about problems before they cause extra expense. Yes, we cost more than the cheapest guy in town initially, but in the long run, we are the cheaper guys because we get things fixed. Now, look for a clean, well-organized shop with ASE certified techs. One thing to remember, most shops are 100% honest. But like all businesses, there are a few bad ones who might try to scam you. All right, ASE. ASE certification, very important. You want to look for ASE certified technicians. You want to look for a shop that is ASE Blue Seal rated, because that means that they have the some of the highest ratings as far as their techs and everything are concerned. So an ASE Blue Seal shop is your best bet because, number one, all of their techs will be ASE certified. The other thing is when you start looking for a particular repair and you're looking for ASE certified techs, you need brakes. You want a tech working on your car that is certified in brakes. You don't want a tech who isn't certified in brakes but is certified in performance or emissions or something like that. So ask a few questions. Make sure you know who you're dealing with in selecting a shop. And the other thing is to look at how they present themselves. You know, if you're trying to pick a good shop, do you want something where they have all kinds of crap laying around everywhere? Everything's greasy, dirty, nasty, parts strewn everywhere. Yes, shops get messy when the shop is busy. I mean, you come into my shop. No, it is not a palace or anything like that. And when we are busy, yes, there are signs that we are busy. But one thing we don't do is we don't let the mess accumulate to where we have piles of garbage and used parts and stuff laying around. So you're looking for something that is decent and respectable looking, especially that it has a decent waiting area with chairs for you to sit, a TV, and Wi-Fi and stuff like that available to you so you can do your work. You also want to ask for a tour of the shop. Now, this is very important. When you tour the shop, there are certain things that you're going to look for. Number one, you want to go to the restroom. And you want to look at the restroom to see if it is filthy, nasty, dirty. If it is, then chances are, if they don't respect their bathrooms, they're probably not going to respect your car either. And you may wind up with grease and crud all over the inside of your car and stuff like that. But here's a big one. And ladies, this one is for you. And guys, it's for you too if you really care. And that is, when you're going through the shop, one of the things that you look for is, do they have pictures of women? No, I don't mean the techs have a picture of their wife and their kids and tacked up on the notepad that's in the top of many of the modern toolboxes. Nope, nothing like that. What I'm talking about is nude photos and things, compromising photos, or something that is cut from a magazine or something that is, that shows women in a bad light, in a sexual situation or something. If you have anything like that, any kind of girly pictures, that is not the shop that you want to go to. This is disrespectful. It's something that should not happen. You should never see anything like that in a repair shop any more than you would expect to see it in a jewelry store or in the grocery store. It's the same thing. You respect everyone if you want to be in business and be successful and do a good job and have the respect of the community. You have to respect the community to get respect from your community. So look for things like that that are indicators that this is or isn't a shop that you want to deal with. So just a couple of tips there on finding a decent shop. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Brian out in North Idaho, coming up on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Never drive with a bad attitude. I know that's hard with so many stupid, distracted, aggressive, and just plain rude drivers on the road, but it really is the safe thing to do. I drive a lot, and I used to see reckless, rude, or aggressive drivers maybe once a month, but today it seems like every other driver is doing something stupid. When it was sporadic, it wasn't so hard to deal with, but now it seems like there's always an idiot 3 feet from my rear bumper or weaving into my lane or cutting me off. Distracted? Probably. Dangerous? Absolutely. But there's nothing to do except drive defensively and not aggravate other drivers. Much as I'd like to, I don't middle finger the offending driver, and definitely don't hit my brakes to scare a tailgater. Initially, these situations may be simple mistakes, but an aggressive response to a mistake can escalate it into a personal confrontation, which can easily turn into road rage. Unfortunately, you have no idea which one of these idiots will try to hurt you with their car, a weapon, or their fists. Also, never make direct eye contact with the offending driver. If you're the offender, be courteous and get out of the way. Whether it's a mistake or intentional aggression, remember, back down, yield, let it go. It takes brains to overcome anger. Use your brain. Be smart. I get lots of air filter questions, and one of the most common deals with why air filters need to be replaced so often. Well, actually, they usually don't, yet many drivers wind up buying a new air filter at every oil change, which is utterly ridiculous. Drivers say techs tell them if they don't buy a new air filter, they'll waste a lot of gas. Maybe that statement comes from ignorance or maybe dishonesty, but either way, you lose. Decades ago, dirty air filters did waste gas, but today, not so much. Cars now use a sensor to measure the air coming through the air filter, and computers to mix exactly the right amount of gas to match that air. So even though a dirty air filter reduces airflow into the engine, it doesn't affect gas mileage because the computer is always precisely matching fuel to the incoming air. In other words, a dirty filter means less air, and less air means less gas, so there's never an imbalance between air and fuel. Certainly when a filter gets really, really dirty, it can cause performance problems, but even then it may not affect gas mileage. So how long do air filters last? Unless you drive in really dusty conditions, air filters usually last 30 to 60,000 miles. Overselling of air filters is an enormous problem, and the best way not to be taken is to learn how to check your own air filter and check it twice a year.
Now, back to Goss's Garage with your host, Pat Goss.
All right, folks. Hey, if you would like to talk to me, anything at all deals with cars or things with engines in them, 844-885-4677, 844-885-4677. All right, let's go to Idaho and talk to Brian. Brian, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Good morning, Pat. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I have two questions, and I hope you can answer at least one of them.
I'll try.
I'm pretty sure you can't give me a definitive on the first one. In our past talking, I've told you I'm restoring a couple old 69 Fairlanes.
Right.
Now, I am trying to get rust off old parts, which is always challenging, as you might know. Now, I've come across this new thing called electrolysis. It's basically reverse plating, where you take your rusty parts and an anode, and you hook your battery charger up, and it takes the rust away. Last week, we spoke about misinformation on the internet. This is where I am confused, because I know a lot of things about a lot of things. This I know nothing about.
Well,
most of it I see as reasonable. We talked about that last week, about what looks reasonable to someone that kind of knows something at least. So I've seen several different ideas on how to go about this and how to do this.
okay.
It looks like it will work very, very well done correctly, like most things.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any experience with this, or would you suggest stay away from it, or what is your take on that? Basically, is what I'm asking.
All right. Normally.
Then I have a second question. Completely unrelated.
Okay. All right. Well, as far as this reverse electrolysis, yeah, it can work, is my understanding of it. But what they don't tell you is that there's a power factor involved, and that power factor is going to affect the time that it takes to do this, or the size of the material that you can do it to, and things like that. So is it doable? Yeah, I think it is, but I'm not so sure that you can do it with a 12-volt battery or something like that. I think that just like electroplating, that you need large amounts of electrical energy in order to do it. And then you need to have, of course, the proper chemicals in order to get the reaction that you're looking for. We have never tried it, so I can't speak directly to it, but I think that you might wind up, if you're trying to use a car battery or some similar power source, that you might be able to do bolts and nuts and stuff like that, but certainly not bumpers.
Yeah, got it. Yep, that makes sense. Yep. Now, the other part, which is completely unrelated, you're familiar with the old, I'm restoring 69 Ford Fairlanes. You're familiar with that suspension system Ford had, the Mustangs, the Fairlanes.
Right.
In the front. Right. I'm buying parts now, and do you remember the Shelby drop? They have it, where we're actually lowering the inner the inner. What am I trying to say? The inner upper control arm. You're lowering that and correcting something Ford didn't do well in 1969. In my case.
Well, yeah,
you're changing that camber.
Well, yeah, what you're doing is you're lowering the vehicle, but then you adjust the camber to spec once you get it lowered. So
this is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is my question. I want to do the Shelby drop, which lowers the inner upper control arm an inch.
Right.
Now, I also want to lower the car ride height by 2 inches, and I can do that by getting a lowering spring.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems counterintuitive to what I did with the upper control arm just before, because that changes everything.
Right.
It seems it would be better to get, if I could find one to fit, a spindle drop, because that won't change.
Yeah, well, that doesn't, the spindle drop.
The geometry. Yeah.
Right. The spindle drop will not change the geometry of everything in the front end. But if you elect to go with springs, then what you do is you lower it, then you take your readings as far as caster and camber and everything, see how much adjustment you have, and then you buy the camber correction kit that matches how much you need to change it beyond stock.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like a fool because I'm a mechanic by trade in my younger years, but I never specialized in anything. And
right.
I understand enough about this just to get in trouble. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I understand.
I don't want to buy the lowering the Shelby drop, which they use on Mustangs, which the Fairlane's the same as a Mustang,
right?
Basically. And then completely wipe that advantage out by getting lowering springs. That seems counterintuitive to me.
And that's exactly what would happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Because the springs are going to override the Shelby kit.
Okay, that's what I thought too.
Well, you are absolutely on point there.
All right. Well, good. At least my mind's going the correct direction.
Makes you feel better.
Well, slightly, because I ain't done yet.
Yeah, well.
I mean, the car's not on the road yet, though.
Right. But, of course, like we already mentioned, the spindle drop, if you don't mind the problems with the original suspension, the spindle is the easiest and best way to go, because then you maintain everything. You lower it, but maintain all of your stock adjustments and things like that. But personally,
the whole geometry stays the same.
Yeah, but personally, based on how ineffective that suspension really was, I would look more toward getting it down lower for better handling, and also to improve the geometry of it, which there are a number of kits out there to do that.
Yeah. All right, Pat. Well, I appreciate that input. Like I said, I know enough just to get myself in trouble. So I like speaking with someone who knows much more than me, which would be you. So
I've been in this business a lot of years now, and I've learned a few things. But let me tell you, every time I start thinking I'm pretty slick at all of this, there'll be some miserable car that comes through the door, reaches up and bites me right square in the butt and says, "Okay, Goss."
And it's probably a Fairlane.
It could well be. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll do as much research as I can, and I'm not going to drive it from here to like Pakistan. So it's kind of a fun project. So, but I don't want to bite myself in the butt, so to speak, and pay for parts and then waste my money.
You got it.
With the next part. That'd be crazy. So.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll do some more research. I appreciate that, Pat.
Okay. Take care. Yes. Brian calls us from time to time. Always good to talk to him. Sharp fella. He's got a lot of at least Fairlane knowledge, and if you understand one of them, then for the most part you understand all of them. We're going to take a quick break. 844-885-4677 is the number. We'll be right back here on Goss's Garage.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Space Saver spare tires sure do look silly, but if you use them properly, they will get you home safely. Now, a common problem with them is low air pressure. Spares are buried in the trunk and no one ever seems to check their pressure. Plus, they typically require much higher pressure than your regular tires. Also, Space Saver spares have limits on how far and how fast you can drive on them. Bottom line, always read and follow the caution warnings on their labels and sidewalls. Oh yeah, don't be one of those poor schmucks with a flat tire and a flat spare. Check your spare once a month. While checking the spare, look at the jack handle, and the lug wrench to be sure everything is there and in working order. The best spare tire in the world is useless without the tools to put it on the car. Some cars may even require special lug nuts to mount the spare. If those special lug nuts are missing, you will have no safe way to use your spare. Don't fall victim to "it looks good, therefore it must be good." Like when thump bump you're tapped by another car at a traffic light or in a parking lot. You get out and look, and being a good person, yeah, right. You just don't want the hassle of calling the cops and your insurance company. Plus, you don't even see a scratch, so you let it go. That could be a minor to deadly mistake. What you see is purely cosmetic, but hidden behind the cosmetics are safety systems. Those hidden parts absorb and dissipate energy, and they may have been damaged in that tiny bump. The problem is that unless you have energy absorbers and crumple zones checked, they may not protect you if your car is hit again in the same spot. Most safety parts are one-time use, and that first minor bump may have used up a portion of their effectiveness. Then, in an actual accident, they're only partially effective. For instance, the energy absorber may transmit more of the crash energy into the car and the people in the car. That could mean the difference between no or minor injuries or something worse, especially for young or elderly passengers. Even in bumps that seem like a total non-issue, take a minute to exchange information, then have the safety parts behind the bumper checked. It might save a life.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677. That's 844-885-GOSS. And now, Pat Goss.
Hey, for those of you enjoying Goss's Garage on TuneIn.com, please note our new showtime every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you don't miss it. And we always love having you join us. Love your calls as well, 844-885-4677. Lynn has an interesting question. Says, "Hi, Pat. Chevy now has Wi-Fi in its vehicles. Do you see this as a trend or a novelty? This is a feature that could ultimately contribute to more distracted driving. Is this a feature in your opinion? Thanks, Lynn." All right. Is it a novelty? No, not at all. I'm a little confused as to why GM is saying they have Wi-Fi, because most everybody else in the industry is referring to their systems as a mobile hotspot. So you can buy just about any car these days and have Wi-Fi or a mobile hotspot that gives you Wi-Fi. And the thing of it is that most of these systems, they only allow you to do certain things when the car is moving. Now, they try to do away with the distraction of these systems, just like most any car that has nav or has a DVD player in them. You can play movies or whatever you want, but the minute you put the car in drive, it blanks out the screen. You can't watch a movie or anything like that. Well, same with these Wi-Fi systems. They are blanked out or blocked when the car is moving. Now, whatever you have something like this, some kind of a safety thing, there are people out there that want to get around it. Now, the thing that we see the most of are kits that you can buy on the internet that you install in your car so you can watch DVDs while you're driving. It eliminates the safety feature built into the system by the manufacturer. Most of them are $100 to $300, depending on the year, make, and model of the car and complexity of the system and so on. So, same thing applies to the safety features that are built into Wi-Fi, mobile hotspots, and so on. So, yeah, if you want to circumvent the safety features, yes, you can do that. And yes, it is a distraction. It is not just a normal distraction, just like watching a movie as you're driving is not a normal distraction. It is an enormous distraction. Probably on a factor of 10 to what the distraction is from texting or something like that. I don't know. I know that it'd be very, very hard to watch a movie, follow what's happening in the movie. You know, it'd be one thing if you were listening to audio, but in order to follow a movie, you have to visually look at it. And in order to look at it, you have to take your eyes off the road. So you put all of that together, and good God, what a nightmare that is. And yet we have hundreds of these kits available. They're everywhere on the internet. Oh yeah, watch, do away with the drive blackout and different things like that do away with these safety things that are built in. So is it a novelty? Nope. It has been here for quite a while now. The first car that I had with it was, I guess 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been around for a while. Like I say, I'm not quite sure why GM wanted to buck the trend and call it Wi-Fi as opposed to a mobile hotspot or whatever. I'm sure they have their reasons, and their reasons are beyond me. And, maybe my thinking on it, as far as the naming is concerned, is too narrow-minded. Anyway, Lynn, I hope that answers your question. All right, now we have another email here. This is from Gift, and Gift is from a country where they have a lot of high temperatures. Anyway, hi, kindly asking for your help. I have a canter. Now, I don't know what a canter is with the 4D35. Now, I presume that this canter with the 4D35, the 4D35 means that it's some type of diesel engine. It is mixing water and oil. I tried to change the cylinder head gasket, but it is still behaving the same. what could be the problem. Thanks in advance, Gift. Well, Gift, the thing here is that there are numerous ways that coolant can get into the oil. Number one, most common, of course, is a blown head gasket. But we see lots of intake manifold problems, like some GMs, the 3.8 GM plastic intake manifold had a passage from the base of the throttle body into the intake manifold, and it had an O-ring around it, and the plastic would erode, and it would start allowing coolant to dribble straight into the lower intake, and then down into the oil pan and mix with the oil. So intake manifold and manifold gasket, but you had to take care of that, at least the gasket, if you replaced the head gasket. Another thing is where the intake manifold attaches, where its water passages attach to the cylinder head. And we used to see that on cars that had a crossover passage in the front and the back of the engine on the intake manifold, and it would circulate coolant. And if you looked at those, you would see that you had a thermostat sitting someplace right up on the top of the manifold, and the coolant circulated past it, and that's how you controlled minimum coolant temperature. So you would look at that. The other thing is, most modern cars have aluminum cylinder heads. I don't know if that's the case with this Canter or not. If it is, then the cylinder head should be pressure tested to see if there's a crack. Now, cylinder heads crack. It's nothing new. It's been going on for a long time. But back when cylinder heads were made out of cast iron, it was a pretty easy process. They did something called magnafluxing. Now, magnaflux is where you use a machine to magnetize the part that you're going to check, whether it's a engine block or a cylinder head or whatever, and then you sprinkle this iron powder onto the surface of the part, and the magnetic currents, whatever you want to call them, the flow of the magnetism through the part, if there's a crack, you'll see it in the iron powder that you have applied, because it'll outline the crack because there's no current flow there and there's no magnetism there. So that was a pretty easy process. But then along comes aluminum cylinder heads. Okay, now, whole new world. Very, very different. With the aluminum head, what you do is you pressure test it. But because metals react to heat and things like that, you have to heat the head and pressure test it. So that means the machine shop has to have this plate that the head gets bolted to with an appropriate sealing device, a gasket or a big O-ring or something like that. And you heat it, you apply pressure to it, see if it'll hold pressure. If it won't hold pressure, then you have a crack, you have a leak. Well, that can be a little daunting, finding a shop that, number one, has the equipment, and number two, knows how to do it properly. So, depending on how much or how little of that you have done, then, you may have to take this apart again and have the cylinder head tested. The other thing, of course, is that there is the possibility of a cracked engine block, and the engine block itself is allowing the coolant to run into the oil pan. Another thing that we've seen on a few are sand holes. If you remember that most engine blocks are cast using a sand mold, and sometimes there'll be a little crumble of sand that gets into the actual metal, and over time that sand will, one grain at a time, go away, and your net result is that you have a hole in the engine block, and that hole allows coolant to flow into the oil and mix with the oil. So these are things that you need to test. Not the easiest thing in the world. If the head gasket didn't fix it, now you may have to get serious about testing. We're going to take a break. 844-885-4677. Call me if you have a question or a comment.
Stay tuned. Pat will take your calls next at 844-885-4677. Goss's Garage continues in a moment.
Never drive with a bad attitude. I know that's hard with so many stupid, distracted, aggressive, and just plain rude drivers on the road, but it really is the safe thing to do. I drive a lot, and I used to see reckless, rude, or aggressive drivers maybe once a month. But today, it seems like every other driver is doing something stupid. When it was sporadic, it wasn't so hard to deal with, but now it seems like there's always an idiot 3 feet from my rear bumper or weaving into my lane or cutting me off. Distracted? Probably. Dangerous? Absolutely. But there's nothing to do except drive defensively and not aggravate other drivers. Much as I'd like to, I don't middle finger the offending driver, and definitely don't hit my brakes to scare a tailgater. Initially, these situations may be simple mistakes, but an aggressive response to a mistake can escalate it into a personal confrontation, which can easily turn into road rage. Unfortunately, you have no idea which one of these idiots will try to hurt you with their car, a weapon, or their fists. Also, never make direct eye contact with the offending driver. If you're the offender, be courteous and get out of the way. Whether it's a mistake or intentional aggression, remember, back down, yield, let it go. It takes brains to overcome anger. Use your brain. Be smart.
This is Goss's Garage with Pat Goss. Call the show now at 844-885-4677.
Folks, please subscribe to Goss's Garage on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. And for more car tips, tricks, and money-saving ideas, visit goss-garage.com. All right, couple things. Number one, you may notice that we no longer have commercials for BG products, and that is because they have decided to change their marketing strategy. So I am no longer speaking for BG products. I still sell them in my shop. I still use them in my car, but no more explaining how all of their stuff works and stuff like that. Good products, enough said, all that's going to be said. All right. Let's see. Kamang says, I would humble to assist me with type of oil can I use for Golf 5 GTI DSG. It's an automatic car with the kilometers around 200,000. All right. what do we have here? Golf 5. Now, I presume that because of the question that this is from some country where there's either really high or really low temperatures. Without knowing that, I can't really make a recommendation, but the Bible for this sort of thing is going to be the owner's manual. Now, some people seem to think that if their car requires, let's say, 5W20, and they're living in the Middle East or Africa or someplace where there is really high temperature for a good portion of the year, that they should use some different oil than what's in the owner's manual. Well, unless the owner's manual gives you a chart showing different temperatures and different oils to use for different temperatures, the oil that you use remains the same. You'll talk to people and you'll find that, you couldn't use that 5W20 in high temperature because it's too thin. Well, where is it written that thicker oil is better? Thicker oil is not better. Thicker oil is not worse. You know what thicker oil is? Thicker. That's it. Not better, not worse, thicker. And if it happens to meet the criteria for your particular car under certain circumstances, then use it. But if the people who designed and built your car feel that a 530 or a 520 or 020 is what is best for your car, unless it tells you something different for different temperatures, ambient temperatures, and so on, stick with what the owner's manual says. Golly gee. Hairy homeowner down the street that bangs away on cars, every neighborhood has one of these guys, that goes out, thinks he's a technician or a mechanic, and fixes people's cars in his backyard. And, oh my goodness. Maybe they're fine at hanging some brake pads or something like that. But knowing the engineering of an engine, they'll tell you all kinds of, I want to use 20W50 in my car. Golly, it's got to have some manly oil in there. Well, excuse me, folks. How does that make any sense? The oil that belongs in an engine is determined by the clearance between the moving parts. The tighter the moving parts, the thinner the oil has to be in order to flow between those moving parts properly. Now, you put a thicker oil in a car, let's say it requires 0W20, you put 20W50 in there, and what happens is that the oil is too thick to move between the parts, like the bearing and the crankshaft, and now it kind of backs up on the back side of that. Now, what that means is that we're going to see something that may please you on the dash. If you happen to have an oil pressure gauge, we're going to see higher oil pressure, and higher oil pressure is good. But what we won't see is that we are reducing the amount of oil that can flow between those moving parts. Now, because oil is the sole cooling agent for the crankshaft and bearings and parts like that inside the engine. No, there's no coolant, no engine coolant that flows through those parts. It's all oil that picks up the heat from the bearings and stuff like that, and then dissipates it into the air around the oil pan. So, now our sole cooling agent we're going to put thicker oil in there, and then we're going to slow it down so that we have less oil moving through the bearings, less cooling, because we have less oil moving through the bearings. And that means the bearings are going to run hotter. And the hotter they run, the shorter their life. So I'm not really sure where all of these jackass ideas come from, but there are all kinds of them out there. And, they really don't do you any good at all. I mean, they shorten the life of your engine. They may waste fuel. They do all kinds of bad things as far as your car and your engine and so on are concerned. So I don't know. Open the owner's manual, look to see what it recommends, stick with what the owner's manual recommends. Harry homeowner down the street doesn't have hundreds of engineers that sit around, calculate, and do all of the math necessary to figure out what oil delivers the best compromise. And a lot of things on cars are compromises, but the best compromise between good fuel economy, long wear in the engine, and so on. So vehicle manufacturers do, and they're the ones that designed your engine. They are the ones that determined what would be the proper oil to go in it, and Harry homeowner doesn't know more than all of those engineers. Another question here comes from Damien, about the state of charge of a battery. He's got a problem. He's trying to get a car that has an intermittent no start, and he says he keeps testing the battery. Tests the battery during one of these episodes. And he says the battery is always fully charged, but the car won't start. Sounds like it has a dead battery. And so here's the drill. He says that he's got 12 volts. Well, guess what? If he has 12 volts, 11.96 volts is only 40% charged on a 12-volt battery. See, a 12-volt battery does not operate at 12 volts. When it's 100% charged, it's 12.73 volts. And 90% is 12.62, and so on. Where we get down right around 12 volts, it is 50% charged. So, for all intents and purposes, because he has this battery that is 12 volts, and he spells it out, 12.00, tested with a digital volt ohm meter, which it surprises me that he knows that he needs to use a digital volt ohm meter to test, but apparently doesn't understand batteries and how they work, and that 12 volts is discharged. It's a dead battery. It's a seriously dead battery. And of course the car isn't going to start. So keep that in mind. A fully charged battery is 12.73 volts, not 12 volts. At 12 volts, it is something between 50 and 40% remaining as far as its charge level is concerned. So for all intents and purposes, it is a dead battery. So a couple of things to look for. If you suspect you may have a battery problem, look at the lights. Turn the lights on, try to start the car. If the lights just dim a little bit, chances are it's not your battery. Chances are it's something electrical in the car. But if you try to start it, and as soon as the starter motor engages, all the lights go out. If you've got the headlights on, boom, they go out. The lights on the dash, the red lights and everything, boom, they're gone. Release the key and the lights slowly come back. Chances are you have a bad battery. You need to have the battery tested, because what you're doing is a normal amount of electrical energy being drawn from the battery causes the voltage to drop so low that it can't even light the lights on the dash. So keep that in mind. That's an easy trick to give you an idea as to where the problem is. Hit the key, engage the starter, and the lights go out. Release the key, back to the run position. The lights slowly come back and get nice and bright again. Usually going to be a battery issue. Well, my goodness, folks, we have that music. You know, time flies when I'm talking to you. Really appreciate you listening, your calls and everything every week. So, with that in mind, thank you for listening. Thanks to Steve McMillan and George Stockton for producing today's show. For everyone here at Goss's Garage, I'm Pat Goss. Until next time, please, everybody, drive gently. See ya.